Everybody, welcome to another episode of Ramblemancy. It's been a minute here, where as we do the sort of like every other week for the last couple of weeks. But yeah, tonight we are joined by Kate O'Sullivan, who is you will probably know from our chat, but perhaps from other Twitch streams, either modding or streaming. So, Kate, welcome.
Hi, hello. I'm sorry to have just been a complete jerk, being like, "Hey, you've got bots. Can I get rid of those, please?"
No, it's good. We
Just before we went live.
Listen, it's
God.
no secret that we have sort of slightly fallen off our maintenance of the like bot aspect of this channel. So, it's always helpful to have that reminder.
I lean so hard on the tools that Twitch introduced after the big like botting, hate rating stuff that happened a few years ago. Like it took them forever, but they did actually wind up putting tools in so that like you can require people to like have verified phone numbers or emails or whatever.
Yeah.
And a verified requiring people to have a verified phone number to chat is annoying sometimes for some people, and a surprising number of people I found actually don't, which is just interesting. But it also fully keeps bots from being able to chat.
Yeah.
It stops them from chatting, but it doesn't stop them from doing other stuff, which is the part.
Right.
Well, that's not a now conversation. That's not fun for people to listen to. Me nerding out behind the scenes of Twitch.
Yeah. No, I suppose I've forgotten about the thing that is currently in the zeitgeist with scraping literally every scrap of data from the internet.
There it is. Yeah.
I was going to say I hadn't thought about that in terms of Twitch.
Yeah. Also, Discord links that people occasionally post in their chats that suddenly bots can get into. Yeah, it's great. It's super great.
Yeah. Yeah. Nico, that's a great point. Yeah. Nico, that's a great point. Getting bots in your Twitch chat is like having barnacles on your boat. Yeah. It's bound to happen if you sail enough. Yep. Very true.
You do still have to scrape the bottom of your boat on occasion, otherwise it creates too much drag and your boat is less efficient. So, scrape your boats. Scrape your boats.
There's a joke in there, I'm sure, like boats, drag, stream, like somewhere. I don't know. I've given you all the pieces of that joke. You can put it together yourselves. Yeah. That's an IKEA joke. It's
an IKEA joke.
It's an IKEA joke. You put it together yourself. Anyway, scrape your chats.
Scrape your boats. Bonk your chats, yeah. Something like that.
Scrape your boats, bonk your chats. I need that on a t-shirt with the Twitch logo.
It's just good advice for all aspects of life. So anyway, I think, what do I do? I normally start with announcements. The only real announcement that we have right now is that, which I think I already gave on a previous stream, but we are actually completely done filming the back half of Tomorrow is Dead Season 2. And that will be starting. We actually have a release date, which John will tell me what it is because I don't actually remember off the top of my head.
Sorry, I was checking one of our cast members' Twitter to see if they had put something on public social media. So to decide whether or not
wasn't it not the 15th or something?
Yes, that's right. It's April 15th. Yes.
So like 11 days, like not this coming Monday, the Monday after.
Correct.
11 days for me, 12 days for you because time zones are wild.
Yeah. Especially Australian time zones. I'm gonna ask you questions about that because I have a lot of them, and all of them are what? Anyway.
Ramblemancy topic right there. Be careful.
But yeah, so that'll be on Monday, April 15th. We will begin airing them, and they will be airing on YouTube rather than Twitch. We've decided to go back to the YouTube live premieres as opposed to the Twitch, just because it's easier on both our the computer and also on our needing to be physically present and involved with the aspects of the stream, and that is hard. Anyway, that will happen. And yeah, I don't remember. Did we decide on a time? I don't remember. This is the thing about having an ADHD brain. You keep your brain in other people. 5?
I think 5, right?
Yeah.
5 Pacific. Yes. You use other people like your external drives, and also your only drives.
Keep your brain in other people is a different sentence.
Yeah.
Crowdsourcing your storage.
Just Futurama for me, just like lots of heads in jars.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's it. That's our announcements. We're still working on changes to our Patreon tiers, but we should be rolling those out really soon. But yeah, we have a. I think we have a something that we're testing out, and then we will be ready to like make actual announcements that are useful about our Patreon. Other than that, we for the foreseeable future we will mostly be doing Ramblemancy. So yeah. John, what do you got for us tonight?
I knew it was coming. I always know it's coming, and then I forget about it while you do announcements, and I'm just like cruising along on the ramble vibes.
That does make me feel better about how engaging my announcements are. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also just like I'm engaged, thinking like, okay, double checking like the things we have to announce in my head, like this and this and this, and I'll like make sure that we talk about this. So we get to the end, and I'm like, ah, shit, this is the part where I have to talk. I'm just gonna say hello to chat. Also, L&L covers. Hi, welcome.
That's one of my people who's decided to wake up at a reasonable hour. Hello, my people.
Excellent. Coops asked a very important question, which was, does this make Twitch mods boat bottom cleaners? And honestly, that's how it feels sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of the time, yes, because we scrape the bottom of the barrel to get it off the boat.
Yeah.
So the boat can keep going. Yeah.
The number of times modding for art stream friends where I just have to like, I'll see a comment that got filtered and I'm like, dude, touch grass.
Yeah. And as a femme human on the internet who mods for some other femme humans on the internet.
Yep.
I'm gonna say it. Twitch is not a dating site. Get out.
Oh God.
Like,
the number of times that I have banned.
It's just not my dating site. Go away.
I mod for a femme art streamer, and the number of times that I have banned people from that chat and then just been like, respect women, man. Like, it's really, truly not difficult.
Yeah. So you were telling us like right before we went live that you are involved in a lot of different like streams all across Twitch, either modding or being on them.
Yeah, I don't know how to say no. Apparently, I've not learned that valuable lesson in life. For those of you in the chat that don't know me, hi, I'm Kate. I often say I'm a loud one with a microphone, which is a fairly accurate representation of who I am as a person. But I play on Dungeons and Doctorates, which is a TTRPG actual play podcast set at a fantasy university where we play 3 fantasy PhD students, as well as a bunch of other minor characters, because there's nothing better than nerding while you nerd.
Exactly.
And then I play on the Meeples and Dragons Radiant Shadows campaign, which is like a classic D&D. I've just joined the cast for Mistworld, which is a podcast-driven, but you can listen to it on YouTube as well, Tiny Dungeon podcast, where I play a French ladybug with glittery wings, because, again, why not?
Right.
Then, I played during GaryCon for GaryCon Live Australian edition, Jasper's Game Week Aussie edition. I just pop up around the internet like a general pest. Is my that's my usual thing. And I also some Australians who went to PAX last year, PAX Australia that is, know me for basically asking an entire room full of over 300 people whether or not they would or would not bang certain D&D monsters for about an hour. That was my job.
Good. We are definitely going to be talking about that. I just hope that I don't know that if you like had any different expectations, but that is going to come up.
I figured, yeah.
Ever since you mentioned it that one day. Ever since you mentioned it that one day, John has been like John's always bringing it up. He's like, we got to do this. Like,
sincerely, I am sincerely so like as another like writing language person, like I'm so impressed with Crit or Kiss as the title of that show. It's so good.
Yeah.
We are. I mean, I think everyone kind of knew after we filled the venue last year and they couldn't get anyone else in, and they were enforcers outside stopping people from coming in. that I am pitching it again for this year. So
good. Yeah, as you should.
I don't know why I would do that. But yeah, so it went way better than I ever expected.
Powerful need to fly you out to PAX Unplugged and do it for an American crowd this year.
Look, I would happily do that if PAX Unplugged would fly me out from Australia, but that's the issue, is the getting me across the entire world. Yeah. Maybe 2025. Let's see if I can run it twice and make a proof point, and then be like, guys, come on. Just
and like you've already done it at a super successful panel at 2, like it's a PAX show. It's all proof of concept.
Yeah. It's
there.
I mean, and yes, I'll tone it down slightly for an American sensibility because I understand. I just went through my instinct of like, am I allowed to swear on this channel? Can 100%. I say swear words on this channel?
Yes, you can.
Great. We nicknamed ourselves Monster Fuckers Anonymous. We can't do that in front of an American audience.
There's the thing is that stuff like with conventions, it's so interesting. It depends on the convention. There are some conventions where you could get up in America, where you could get up on that stage in front of God and everybody and be like, Monster Fuckers Anonymous, baby.
It's anonymous, yeah.
And the whole crowd would go nuts. And then there's some conventions where you get up and you say that and like half the crowd's gonna be like, what?
I'm sorry, that's against every. I'm like, okay, I'm Australian. Am I family friendly? Am I Australian? Hard to know.
I have a feeling those mean different things in different places. The
Monster Manual has a lot of options to choose from, and there are a lot of different monster manuals. So like what was your selection criteria? Like did you just like cruise through based on like vibes? Like did you have like a system that you developed as you were getting ready for that panel?
A bit of both. So I originally was like, okay, I got to do some of the big classic hits because it's the first one we're doing. Like it would make sense to do a couple of really obvious ones. Like we did the gelatinous cube, we did the owlbear. Like why not, And then I from that was trying to find ones that felt different because I didn't just be like, here is picture, would you bang it or not? It was, I wrote functionally like the dating game bios. I called them Tinder bios, but they're not. I'll pull one up while I'm talking to sort of show you what I mean, because I think there's nothing better than what we actually did. Smash or pass. Here we go. So like actually the one I wanted to do straight up off the bat was the Mind Flayer, because Baldur's Gate had just come out. It made perfect sense to just grab that and go, right? So I wrote, I read these live. The up on the screen was this text, but there was no picture of the monster. All they got was this description. Then they had to discuss it, make the decision, and then I wrote what the monsters were, which was great because it meant that half of the job was working out what it was. The audience got to guess alongside everyone. The audience got to vote alongside everyone, and then everyone in the room got to go at the same time. Perfect. So we had a great communicator thanks to their psionic powers. This controller of empires and interdimensional voyager is one hell of a people person. Preferring to avoid making the first move, they experience euphoria as they consume memories, innermost fears, and truly experience your personality. A real community builder, they can hold multiple conversations at once and flex in hungry anticipation when newcomers are near. That was all they got. That was all they got, and they had to decide.
That's
on
incredible.
What they would do.
See, like knowing it's the Mind Flayer here, like, oh yeah, clearly. But then, like, sitting on the putting myself in the audience, not knowing that that's the Mind Flayer. There are a lot of psionic monsters in Dungeons and Dragons,
which we discovered because there are a lot that had that vibe. Let me give you one that you don't know, that I'm not preluding you, that I've already done.
Yeah.
Or okay, I'll give you this one, and then. Girl Wonder, who's in the chat, and Eleanor Covers, who are in the chat, they were in the audience for this.
Okay.
So they know what this monster is. They're the only people I think in the chat right now who will.
That's right. So, I forgot that Anne went to PAX East. Or not PAX East, PAX Oz.
PAX Oz, yeah. With a flawless memory, your beloved has untold eons to plot and to prepare their plans for the perfectly executed date. These godlike beings are able to use their telepathic powers to read your mind and know your deepest desires, and they'll use that knowledge to fulfill your every want and need. With a flawless memory, they'll never forget your birthday, and they've got everything you need: length, lubrication, and rows of pearly white teeth.
Oh, I have a guess. I've. All right. Should I just guess?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
All right. I'm guessing that this is an aboleth.
This is, in fact, an aboleth. This is what was described on stage as a fleshlight with teeth.
Yeah. That's...
Or rather, I think the sentence was, do you want your fleshlight to remember everything you did to it?
Horrifying. Horrifying sentence.
Man, there's...
So that's what I wrote. That I wrote terrible bios based on the D&D Monster Manual descriptions, as well as I am friends with the guy who runs the Forgotten Realms wiki, because we went to the same uni, basically. And so I'm using some of the stuff from his, which collapses 5e and 3.5 and all of the different descriptions into one document, and pulling out the important bits so that you could maybe guess. Speaking of, hi, the Bad Cat Man, one of the editors of the Forgotten Realms wiki, who's just popped into chat. Hello. Speak of the devil. So
that kind of thing just never ceases to surprise me in this industry, because like we all talk about it as like, oh yes, the tabletop RPG industry, and we're for like this big umbrella term that encompasses like actual play and tabletop RPGs and like indie tabletop RPGs, and like sometimes people like kind of shove board games like a little bit under there. And you know, it feels big sometimes, and other times it feels very, very small. And this is one of those instances where it's like, oh yeah, I know the person who runs the Forgotten Realms wiki because I went to school with them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's even weirder because I knew them before I ever played tabletop. So they didn't get me into tabletop. I just knew them before I ever got into tabletop. So.
Well, like some of the another one of the wild ones, like some of the folks that I work with every year at conventions, Possum Creek Games, like Jay and Ruby went to LARP camp, and guess what? The LARP camp that they went to was the same LARP camp where Brennan Lee Mulligan was, and still is, I believe, a counselor. So they're like, oh yeah, no, our friend Brennan Lee Mulligan. Of course.
Like, cool, thanks.
Yeah,
and like that just like that kind of shit at like all levels of it just happens everywhere, and I adore it. It's so cute.
Yeah. So I think, but yeah, you got that's the vibe of what we did for PAX. I had 5 panelists. I have a slightly different 5. One person's not coming this year, so I've got a replacement for them. But pretty much the panelists are going to be potentially coming out. Yeah. At uni, we just thought Kate knew everyone. We called it being Kated. This is not an untrue statement. That is a thing.
I've been that person before. You and I seem to have been the same person that, because there was a joke for a long time, and I resisted for a very long time that I knew everybody on campus. I was like, no, I don't know everyone on campus. And then all of a sudden, in that exact moment, somebody would walk by and be like, hi, Lucas. And I'd be like, okay, fine.
Yeah. My thing was that I'm a node. Everyone knows me. That doesn't necessarily mean I know everybody.
Right.
But as soon as I was the first aid officer for a bunch of the big uni parties, because I was, context for anyone who's not in Australia, the drinking age here is 18. I was 17 all of my first year of university. So I couldn't go to events and drink, but I had a first aid qualification. So I could go to events, not drink, and be the first aid person, because they needed someone who wasn't going to drink at an event where people wanted to drink.
Right.
So I ended up knowing a lot of people because all the committees wanted me to do stuff. And then I ran for like student government. I don't know what the equivalent is to what it is here, but so a lot of people knew who I was. So I was on the student union for 2 years as an independent. I didn't run in we have political parties within the student government. It's
okay.
I have opinions. But yeah, I ran as an independent and got elected, which probably says enough about what I was like as a known entity.
Excellent. Oh man.
Everyone was like, the two-party system? No, we're voting for Kate.
I mean, I ran as Kate. It was like 2008, so it was Kate 08 because I'm a lame individual, and it worked. So we keep that.
Hey, look, it's amazing how far like just little turns of phrase and sound bites will get you. Like it's.
Yeah. I mean, look at most of the political systems around the world. Not an untrue sentence on every level.
I wish.
But let's go back to escapism.
Anyway,
and TTRPGs.
Moving right along.
we're having a really interesting conversation before the stream about accent work too. That I think was really fun because like last week we didn't have Ramblemancy because Lucas Freeman and I were celebrating a friend's birthday by doing an online murder mystery party. And pretty much everybody in there, like, there weren't, from what I gather, there weren't, like, a ton of, like, accent requirements on other people's. But Allison, for some reason, was just like, no, we need John to play the Frenchman. And so I got to pull out my, like, passing, like, French accent for the evening, relying mostly on the fact that I had sang a bunch of French art songs in college.
Yeah. Look, at least you didn't rely entirely on the BBB ha 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 and French accents.
The problem, like the biggest problem that I faced going into that is that there were several people who were attending that party that are all in on a joke among our circle of friends. Because a few years ago, somebody had found like a cute little like plush pillow in the shape of a penis. And it was for some reason called Pierre. And so I did a silly, like, just really bad French accent for it. But there were several people in that group who were going to be at the murder mystery party. And I was like, if I can't do, like, a real sounding French accent, everyone is going to hear Pierre the penis pillow all night.
Yeah. I was going to say that's fair. I don't know that fair is the word that I want to use there, but also, I've just realized that my captions are not working, so I apologize.
They do that.
Chat, but,
Here, I'll send you
the invite link is
broken.
No,
they're all dead. Everyone's been kicked out.
Yeah, mine perished as you said that.
Oh, they're all gone.
Sorry, just to be that guy, but like, hi. Sorry to talk accessibility, but everything is broken and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yep. I feel like they've been doing that more and more often lately. Anyway, you should have.
I'm having too much fun and talking too fast. I fixed it. Yeah.
It's so funny because like there's been a few instances where like especially like it's especially nerve-wracking when this happens during an actual play, but there's been instances where I've had to like quickly bail out of an accent because I was like I led with confidence and it just wasn't enough to get me there. But like the one and only time, here's what I will say, and the one and only time I have attempted an Australian accent because I cannot for the life of me get it right, was during one of our actual plays where very specifically there were some characters that had been some NPCs that had been made up by our Patreon writers room, where one of the characteristics of one of them was that he spoke with a intentionally like with a bad Australian accent because some of the lore behind him was that he was sort of, this was during like our cyberpunk actual play, and so he sort of modeled his entire personality off of like the really just like basically like we're talking like Crocodile Dundee kind of like nonsense. And it was
they're like talking right out of here, like you're in the middle of northeast, like far eastern Queensland, and you just gotta
And the thing about him was, the thing about this character was that in world it was a fake accent, like he was not Australian, and so like there was this whole thing, and the unfortunate thing, and this is where I was like, is I tried it, I attempted it, and I went through it, and it was really bad, but then the fact that it was on purpose bad never came out. Like, none of that came out in the actual play. No. So now I'm just stuck forever doing a really terrible Australian accent in a recorded format.
So, that like just
never became part of it.
I have a whole bunch of tricks that I use for accents, some of which are like cue phrases. So to do Scouse, like Liverpool, England, is, you're right, Mum, I can't sleep, I'm hungry, I'm starving. And all of a sudden I can talk, like I've got this Liverpudlian Scouse and like small child, but like fine, whatever. But it's all, for me, it's all where it is and where you're talking through. So Australian, live on your vocal cords forever. It's gonna hurt, it's gonna suck, but just to do it properly, it's got to come from like right back here, and I hate it. But half of the rest of it is how you hold your mouth. French accents, specifically Paris accents, come out through a hole that's like the size of the opening on a soft drink can, because you don't need to move your mouth very much to talk like you are from France, because your voice doesn't have to go very far. You're not not talking across large distances. You are talking to somebody who is this far away from you. Why would you need to move your mouth very much? But if you're doing wide Australian, your mouth's going to go really wide so that it can go a really long distance across half of the outback. But the same is true of like New York versus the South. Right? Thinking about where people live will help with that too.
Yeah.
If you're in a part of the country where you need to be heard a long way away, wide mouth, big sound.
Yeah.
Small mouth, tiny sound.
That is an aspect of it I'd never thought of.
For the French stuff, I legitimately wrote down just like the some like simple rules for myself to remember, which was TH to Z. IH becomes E, like E, like but not like E like American, like E.
E.
Yeah, it's
I know what you are saying. It's hard, especially because you drop every H off the front of every word.
Yeah, I wrote H and then the arrow just said nope.
Yeah.
Ours were labeled gargle it.
Yeah. It's interesting. But I also say, like, people go, why you all of your characters have accents? I'm like, yes, so I can keep them straight in my head about who is who.
That's okay.
You don't need to do an accent. You don't need to do one if you can keep your characters straight. I am lazy. I use accents as a cheat code.
This is a thing for me. I was actually just thinking about recently, right? Because I for a while I was kind of like a little bit self-conscious about doing like accent work. Like there was a while where I just would jump into it and wouldn't think about it. But then there was like, and specifically as the move to actual plays that made me feel a little bit self-conscious about the whole accents thing. Not just about like doing it wrong and then potentially offending somebody, but also like the fact that like there was a at the time, I don't know if this is still the case, but at the time there was like the huge like the going wisdom was like don't like doing an accent isn't role playing, which I agree it's not. It's not the entirety of it. And I think
just doing an accent isn't
right. That's yes, exactly. And that was kind of like the going wisdom. But the thing that I have recently kind of come back around to because I've started doing it more now, once again, is the fact that for me, when it's really helpful as a GM, where it's really helpful is when there are multiple NPCs in a scene. Because I don't want to have to constantly stop and go, okay, and then so-and-so says, and then say what they say. It's very helpful if you have different NPCs with different accents in the same scene, because then you can just kind of keep the flow going, right? Without having to stop and narrate who is talking. You can just talk, and then everybody will know who it is. And that's a thing that I didn't think about back then, but recently have been sort of paying a lot more attention to. And
like, how does your character interact with the world? So a lot of my bards end up with French or like Gaelic or whatever, very lyrical languages and accents that make sense because they are going to be speaking in such a way that you want this like floaty. I personally am not going to do a like harsh speaking Russian bard. It's not me. That's not what I'm going to do. Yeah. Someone else can. But my bard style characters are not. Yeah, like it's not, and that's not a negative on that as an idea.
Yeah, no.
I know exactly what fucking bard you're talking about, you jackass.
Yeah, that was Yuri. He was.
But like at the moment, I have so my glitter bug, which is the type of like racial species heritage of the tiny dungeon character I play. She is like the way I described her once was insectoid cat woman with big glittery red ladybug wings with music notes all over them.
Ooh.
Like, that's what she looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So she has a French accent because she's like a sexy French bard. Like, that's what we're going for trope-wise. Do I hate that that's the trope I'm leaning on? Yeah, kinda. Does it work? Yes, because also if, pending a whole bunch of stuff, if we decide to go down a route that includes, like, espionage or whatever, it's a cool trope to play with. Or we can not do that. We can go down another route and she's just like femme fatale, or we can... I know what realms I can play in with a character like that. My uptight British wizard from the imperial, like high elf British wizard, conjuration wizard with a stick up her butt has a RP accent because of course she does. Yeah. That makes sense. She has a stick so firmly up her butt it is ridiculous. Like, what do you want? I don't tend to give my characters Australian accents because then when I am talking out of character, it's also very clear. Because I RP quite hard, it's also very helpful for the characters, the other players and the DM to know when I am me and when I am character.
Yeah.
That sort of delineation can help for people when I'm such an RP person.
Yeah, it's so interesting so I saw this comment from Newly Human saying, I find the speed at which I'm talking is pretty easy thing to manipulate. It goes a long way toward character. And I agree. During that period of time when I was like very, very self-conscious about doing accents, I actually started leaning on other things. So it actually turned out to be kind of a good thing because I started leaning on other things to differentiate characters in terms of like if it's in a visual, which it often was, like I would body language would change, right? Body language would change, like your pitch, the pitch at which you speak, changing, just sort of general like physical and like vocal like mannerisms, like tics, things like that were they were the thing that I would lean on when I wasn't really doing accents. So it ended up being like actually kind of a good thing in a way, because I was able to like now that I'm kind of going back to using accents in my GMing, like now I have such a much larger toolbox to turn to like differentiate characters, because now I can just combine accents and mannerisms, and now I can do, and so it was like it was ended up being kind of a good thing to do. But yeah.
I don't know what the others think, but I am of the opinion that an accent isn't like I break an accent down into like speed, pitch, phonemes. Like there's all these different elements of it that one French accent is not the same as another French accent. One Australian accent is not the same as another Australian accent. The Time Doctor has said, you don't have an accent normally, Kate, but then as Australians, we don't hear it. I have a very standard Perth. That's like the city I live in. There's enough people here that I don't care that people know that that's the city I live in. There's only one on the West Coast. It's not hard to work it out. I don't have a particularly thick Australian accent because I grew up around people who don't, and that's fine. But I absolutely have an Australian accent because the second you put me in another part of the world, it is very clear that I'm from here. Not just the ear on the end of every word. No rhotic R's over here. But idiomatic and linguistic choices you make. Yeah, nah, yeah is something that people say here, and I do too. No worries is my personal favorite. No worries doesn't mean anything outside of Australia. It's not a sentence. Here, it's a response. It's a complete sentence. Yeah, no worries. It's like, that's fine. I'll sort it out. Don't worry about it. It's idiom is just as important.
Yeah.
Bad cat man. Yeah, nah. Like, right?
That's like the Americanized
yeah,
version.
they mean the opposite. Like
yeah,
no,
and no, yeah, mean two very different things.
Yeah. Is yes. Just doesn't sound like anything. Means nothing. Yeah. But it is interesting how, because I've listened to a lot of people who go, oh, I've got a brilliant American accent, and they use Australian idiom in an American accent. I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You are very good at like pitching your voice correctly and having it come like the right amount of nasality, but you don't speak with an American accent. You speak Australian with a layer on top, which is fine, but that's not the same thing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway.
No,
but yeah, I think
What my brain
That
provided
you
was
don't-
a spray painted Australian accent.
Yeah. And to be fair, that's what a lot of American actors, when they try and do an Australian accent, do. Because it's been written by an American, so it is American idiom spoken
Right.
with an Australian accent. And I'm like, no, incorrect. You sound wrong.
It's on a semi-related note. There are lots of times where I'll see, like in a movie or a show, they'll be speaking Spanish and the subtitles are translating, and I'm like, okay, that is literally what they said, but that's not how you say that in the. That's not how you would say that. Like my favorite one, I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was in. I don't remember exactly what show or movie or whatever it was I was watching, but there were characters speaking in Spanish and they were saying to like fire, as in like fire their rifles, but they said the literal translation like they said fuego, which of course is not how they would say that. It would be something like disparen or something like that, dispara or something like that,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a different word, and like it's so funny to me whenever I come across stuff like that. And it's like I feel like this is kind of the same thing where we're talking about idiom here. Like they're speaking the language, but that's not the correct. Like that's not how you say that.
Yeah,
And,
it's like when you're in high school and you're learning. I'm learning like Spanish from a textbook written in Texas 20 years ago, and I would sound like I was speaking Spanish from like the 60s. As
Formal
opposed
language versus natural language.
or
Yeah.
like I ran into this a lot coming to English, because for many years I was a writing tutor, basically throughout my entire like undergrad, and then through some pieces afterwards. I've spent a lot of time tutoring papers in the writing center, and a lot of the people who do come to the writing center, outside like regular American students who are just looking to have their paper touched up, are like exchange students and stuff like that, for whom English is not a first language. And sometimes it would be as simple as, okay, like let's go through and pick at some like articles and stuff like that, which tend to be, for many languages, the hardest thing coming to English. But there would be some where I'd be like, yes, this word does mean something like what you're going for, but it is also so far out of the vernacular that there's a better word. There's a better set of words we could use here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting challenge, but it's also, I think, to sort of tie back to TTRPG land, because I tend to try and get it back on the rails. Not that there's any rails in a ramble, but is that you can make those choices. You can choose to have your character speak what is functionally Australian English with a different accent, and that is fine. None of these things are wrong. It's a TTRPG. We're making stuff up. It's fun. Don't worry about it. But it does mean that it is helpful to know, if you want to do, if you're GMing or whatever, that there are things you can work within that. You can choose idiom. You can choose things further afield than your own little bubble, especially if you're playing accent land. I stand by, not all dwarves are Scottish. They're not. They are, but they're not. Like, why is every dwarf a Scotsman?
Yeah. I think that I think Warcraft had a strong influence on that.
Yeah.
On that particular, I think that was mostly a Warcraft thing. And like, you know what? I will say this. I agree with you on that. I also do stand by the good old like Scottish dwarf. I'm a fan of it.
Nothing wrong with it.
Not at all.
Nothing wrong with it.
It's funny. So the game that I'm running, that Freeman is also in currently, I don't know why this was the move that I made in my head, but I'm like, Dwergar are Russian and they're Slavic. I don't know why. They just are, and like it just felt right. It just felt like the right call. But there's just like I don't know. There's so many of those. Sorry, backing up. Just thinking about the Warcraft thing and that influence. There's so many of those like keystone things in like pop culture that have influenced, I think, huge influence as to like what our perceptions are going into things like TTRPGs and stuff like that, right? Like there's huge influence there, and sometimes to a point where we don't even realize it. That's just so like in the background, and that
I love Bad Cat Man. Hello. has just come out with, I've found canonically Welsh dwarves in the realms. We need more of them. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
End of sentence.
Yes.
Like that'd be fun. But also that idea of those things that are so heavily embedded. Every high elf is an upper class English person. Give me some like rough and tumble American South, like, you know, if you want to keep the high status, fine, make them touchy subjects, but like plantation owner.
So
if you want to keep the status, but like, you know,
you just gave me some really good ideas for the game I'm currently running.
You're welcome. This is what
That's
I do.
actually excellent. Thank you. I'm gonna that
idea of like you can or like, you know, make them Australian, like have them roll in, just be like, yeah, right, yeah, no, I fully understand that you think that about elves. However, no worries. Becomes elvish, just like a string of words that make no sense. Elves are transatlantic now. There you go. See, yes, suddenly good. Every elf is in Casablanca. It's fine. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No,
it's a game.
Speaking of accents, I actually just recently learned, and I mean, it's not like a new thing that I learned, but I had somebody like actually like break it down for me in a way that I'd never really paid attention to before. Mm-hmm. As it turns out, there's like a whole bunch of different like accents that are technically considered, that fall under the umbrella of transatlantic. There's like a bunch of different ones, which I think is fascinating. Like, I think that's such a fascinating thing, because there's like there's like the movie star, like the Judy Garland kind of like, you know, that sort of accent. But then there's also the one that we tend to think of as like the more like typical transatlantic accent, which is the 1920s, like just I forget what it's actually called, but yeah, the like I just always think of the recap announcer from Legend of Korra. That's what I like, and the pro bending announcer from, that's the one that like often is like,
oh, like the radio sound.
Yeah, the radio, yeah, that one.
Yeah. See, huh? Don't you see? Yeah.
Yeah. But it turns out there's at least 6 different accents that are like people think of as like the transatlantic, and I was really surprised to find that there are a couple of them in there that just like I never even thought of as being under that umbrella at all. So it's kind of crazy how like, yeah.
I like that David Hyde Pierce and Kelsey Grammer choose to do a transatlantic accent for the purposes of Frasier. Why not?
Yeah.
You're doing radio psych. Like, absolutely, that is the correct choice. Not that there is a wrong choice, but like, yeah, it's interesting. And as I say, there are no wrong choices in these kinds of things. If it makes sense to you, do it.
It's like, I remember, to that point, I remember when like campaign 2 of Critical Role was coming out, and people were like really upset. Not everybody, but there were some people who were really upset about like, you know, Travis Willingham's choice to do like a southern like a Texan accent for his orc in this fantasy land, and I'm just like, why not, man?
Why not?
It's a fantasy place. It's not real. You can have whatever accents you want in it.
Because I've just seen what Eleanor Covers has put in the chat about Asian country accents. I have a tendency, as a 6'1" white lady of British heritage, to do accents that I resemble, because that way I'm not accidentally playing racial stereotypes that are inappropriate and outdated, and even if I'm not doing it intentionally, not smacking of privilege. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that those choices are wrong. There are people who live in different countries that have different accents and do speak in different ways. But if I was to do a quote-unquote African accent, I would lean towards Afrikaans in South Africa and Zimbabwe, rather than leaning towards like a Congolese or a Somalian accent, because I am a pasty white lady. Like that is mostly to do with almost exclusively I play TTRPGs online, and I am sensitive to the fact that I don't have that lived experience, and it is not fair for me to come in and play that way, which is why I tend to play in Eastern European America, like the Americas, North half accent land. I'm not saying that those choices are wrong, but I think it is something that people need to be mindful of when they are choosing an accent for their character in a publicly available setting. If you're doing it in the privacy of your own home, have a conversation with the people at your table about how they feel about that. But that's not a wrong choice either. It's just making sure that you're not othering anybody unintentionally. That's my opinion.
Yeah. There's just sort of like an extra step or two of consideration that happens when you're doing it for an audience, like to make a thing that other people will watch, as opposed to like I'm sitting down to do this with some friends, which is usually like a conversation that's as quick as like, here's my character concept, is this okay, guys? Like, is that cool with everybody?
Well, it's so interesting because like, even I like I know what I look like, but like even when I was doing, I don't remember if I mentioned this before we went live or if it was after we had gone live, but like doing the sort of like finding that I could do like the sort of like Puerto Rican Spanish accent really well and slip into it, like I still got uncomfortable even though that was literally my accent for like the first several years of my life. I was like, how is this going to look to somebody who like comes in and like doesn't know, you know? And it still felt a little uncomfortable, but I also at the same time I was like, I feel weird about this, but I feel weird about feeling weird about it too, because like it was literally how I spoke for, you know, the first 5 years of my life. And yeah, it was.
There's an interesting conversation that's been happening in a different space. So I have my finger on the pulse about these kind of conversations because it's one of the things I care about in like safety in online spaces. But I've forgotten the guy's name, his actual name. He plays Uncle Roger, the comedy chef. Who like if people aren't familiar, he is Malaysian. He grew up as a child in Malaysia. The way he speaks to Uncle Roger is how he spoke when he first moved to America. He now doesn't sound like that because his accent has shifted to be more. But this is a Malaysian man mimicking his own accent, and people are like, "This is racist." I'm like, "It's really not. It's really not. It's really him talking like probably his dad does. Like, don't."
Yeah.
Oh.
He's a joy to watch.
He is a joy to watch. Frustrating. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you.
Nigel, that's right.
I could not remember his name. Thank you.
A couple things. First, I want to say, Other Doc, it's so good to see you. It's been a long time since I've seen you around here and just anywhere in general. I'm glad you came and joined us. And Chan's also hi. It's been a while. Chan says, this reminds me of a game I was playing where I had an accent, and people asked me what that accent was because they couldn't place it. And I said, that's the point. You're not supposed to know my accent because I'm not comfortable trying to be any one specific accent outside of my specific heritage. Yeah, no, and like that's an interesting point too, because like that is something that like I've thought about as well when it came, especially with like GMing on a stream, like in a public way, is I've actually considered the idea of like, well, could I like hodgepodge my own sort of like indistinct, like can't tie it to anything kind of accent, and that's a hard thing for me personally. I don't know if like I have like my brain quite works that way, like, but it is, I think if you can do it, I think that's a fair way to go about that kind of thing. Like it's really cool if you can. But yeah, I
mean, Rowan, she's my little like Gaelic halfling, and she's very excited about everything. But it's not an Irish accent. It's not a Scottish accent. It's like in between. And it's not like, it's just like Gaelic. But someone had to mimic it. And she was like, what is it? I'm like, yes, I don't know. I have to now work out how I sound to break it down for you. It's like, because she talks about ma and da, and that's the very like Scottish bits. And then there's Irish lilt, and I was like, you're gonna have to go listen to me a bunch. That's all you can do. I don't know what to tell you. If you have to try and be me, good luck. And I pity my DM who says that he doesn't do accents, and then had to be my dad and my mother in the same episode. And I was like, you let me come home. You let me come back to my hometown. You put my parents in these scenes. That is not my fault.
Yeah.
You have to deal with this now.
And I think
also and make sure you have those conversations with your GMs as
absolutely.
well. If you've got alive parents, which I do recommend.
Always fun.
Giving your characters parents. I know we all love a good tragic backstory, but
listen,
happy parents.
And also GMs, there are better ways to leverage that than killing off the characters' families. There are more painful ways to leverage that than killing off their families.
Man, I I played a cleric in a home game a couple of years ago that had like a husband and a daughter, and they were part of the campaign like here and there, but it wasn't like tragic. It was just like, no, I used to be an adventurer. I met a really nice dwarf. I settled down with him. We adopted a daughter. It was really, really cute, and then all of a sudden the world started ending, and I was like, I should probably pick up my hammer and shield again, huh?
Yeah. Coops says, you can be tragic and have parents. Just saying, I agree. People do it in real life all the time. And
I love extortion in this game. Extortion can be great. Extortion doesn't have to be your only method of giving. Like Rowan is like, I'm bored of this small town I live in. I'm gonna go adventuring. We went home and visited Ma and Pa, and Da basically went like, hey, look after my daughter. Don't let her die. To everyone else, and then we were on our way. So now my leverage on everyone else is, you promised my dad that you'd take care of me.
See, disappointing your parents is one thing. Disappointing somebody else's parents, that's
Yeah.
that yeah.
No,
You promised
there's
the adorable
something.
little halfling who's just out to see the world that you'd look after. You promised her dad that you'd look after her.
There's something so much more terrifying about that. Like, there's like, oh man, what if I let my own parents down out here? Ah, yeah, whatever. I can live with that. What if something happens to my friend whose mother I am terrified of?
Yeah.
And who now knows my name and my face, and who at any point could be running directly at me.
Yep.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, and Silver Sugar, that's absolutely right. Like, you can say you have an accent and not be able to do it. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. If you don't want to put those things in, then you don't have to. As I've said, I RP pretty hard, but I also have done my research on a lot of those things before I will RP into anything that is outside of my own. And usually I will have those very heavy discussions around that with GMs, with other players, that they are comfortable before I bring other stuff to the table.
Yeah.
Because it's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost like safety at the table is like one of my big things.
What?
Oh my god.
Almost.
That's not
Wild.
important.
That
No.
I like a dolly zoom just occurred to my brain, and I was just right all the way back to when Monty Cook Games put out the consenting gaming checklist.
Yeah.
And just the absolute grognard shitstorm that
God,
Oh,
I still see it all the
I
time.
still get it. There is a game that I have jumped into playing in that had never done any consent stuff before they started. And I was like, cool. I know you all know each other and have played together for a season. I don't. And I have some stuff that you need to know about. I'm very public on the internet to say that I'm needle phobic. I don't mind that needles exist in the world. Do not use them on my character or I will have a panic attack and I will quit your game. Cool, thanks. Like, that's not hard. Not difficult.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
I also
I'm
find
a human being.
this is obviously not a universal experience, but I also find that in large measure, a lot of the stuff that people will put on their like consent sheets as like a don't do this are things that would either A, never occur to me to do, or B, like don't come up often enough to be a problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like where it's like, I mean, a problem for me as a GM when if somebody brings that to me, it's like, hey, don't put this in the game. Like, I'm like, great. That's not important enough for it to come up and for it to be an issue.
Yeah.
So like, it's not hard to just sort of take the things that people are telling you that are like that they can't do and just not putting them in your game. Like you as the GM especially have like ultimate control over what is and is not in the game, and there's no like this has to be in it or else there's nothing that I can think of that would ever be so core to running a game that you can't, I don't know.
You're making the game up. Guess what? If we were planning to have it in there and it's never come up yet, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
You need to change it because it's not set in stone. Because that's how like collaborative, improvised tabletop works. Yeah, yeah, cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Until one of us speaks it into existence, it's not real.
And even then, you can retcon that.
Yeah, you
That's
can all just
fine.
collectively agree that never happened.
It happened. Like,
Yeah. Like you can just pull up the dupesometer and be like, oh yeah, that's a doopsie. We're gonna watch that one back.
I honestly, truly cannot wrap my head around like the people who like the mentality of the people who push back on kind of like safety tools and stuff like that. I can't wrap my head around it because to me, if I want to play with you, and you tell me that there is like something that you can't have in a game that you're playing, I'm going to prioritize having you in my game over the thing that I want to put in it. Like that doesn't. Yeah.
I found a couple of versions of that. One is people who've never thought about needing it because they play in such a way that they never tend to run up against those things, to whom I say, hey, you don't know everyone at your table, I assume, well enough that you can make that call.
Yeah.
So have the discussion, that's fine. The other is people who are like, well, I want to play a very specific game. And I'm like, that's also fine. I don't know if I want to play in that game. So here are the things that I'm not okay with. If any of that is in your game, just let me know, and I won't play.
Right.
I will choose to take myself out if that is the game that you want to play.
Well, and I think where the
and
problem
I don't mind either way.
Where the problem tends to come in for the people in that camp, I think, is taking like the informed consent part of it, and which in that case being like if you were to come across something in their game that they absolutely want in their game, and you're like, okay, well, I guess this isn't for me. Taking it as like a personal thing, it's like it's not a personal thing. It's just like this isn't the game for me. Doesn't mean I wouldn't have fun playing with you. Doesn't mean I don't want to play with you. Just means that this specific thing that you have in your game, it's not for me, and I think I'm going to opt out of it. Thank you for letting me know it was in there. You know, like it's
this game is not for me, not you as a DM are not for me.
Exactly.
I have a friend who GMs a lot of Cthulhu, and I've said like the odds of me playing with them as a GM pretty low because of where my boundaries are around some stuff. Not because I don't love them dearly. I mod for them. They are one of my favorite people on the planet.
Yeah.
However, unlikely I will be GM'd by them unless there are particular circumstances that the kind of game they want to play, the kind of game that I can play in. If those align, great. If they don't, that's okay. Still a great human.
Yeah.
It's not for me.
Absolutely. There was a different topic that I wanted to go on, that we started to kind of broach earlier, which was the topic of role playing, because we were talking about accents, and we were talking about and so I wanted to get a little bit more into like the actual like role playing conversation a bit, because it's one that we have periodically on here, but every time we have a person we haven't had any a specific conversation with on, it's always worth bringing back older conversations we've already had just to get like different perspectives on things. But like, so one of so I guess the best easiest way to like, now that the easy segue has passed us, to get us back there, I'll ask a question, which is like, what to you, and this is for you here on screen with me, but also you in the chat as well, what to you is kind of is the fundamental sort of aspect of role playing? Like how would you personally define that for yourself, and like what you do in your experience role playing?
In the context of TTRPGs or in the context in general? Because I come from an actor and improviser background, so I am very used to putting a character on in some way. I subscribe to the 90-10 or 80-20, depending on who you are and what game you're playing, rule of if I am in a scene as a character, 80 or 90% is character. There is still 10 to 20% in the back of my brain that is me, because I need to have that to do rules of TTRPGs or safety stuff or making sure I don't slam my kneecap into a table while I'm on the stage, like stuff, right? There's that bit that's still me. So I don't subscribe to method acting. I think it's arse, and that is a whole nother rant. That's a rant-almancy, not a ramblemancy moment. Because
I'll say only that anytime anyone who acts even semi-professionally brings up method actors, it is universally like this.
My general thought on method is like, if you are doing a monologue and you want to go full method to do a monologue by yourself on a stage, fine. Like for an audition or whatever, fine. You are not the most important thing involved in a performance. I don't care how big you are as an actor, you are not the most important thing.
Yeah.
The work is the most important thing, and you are always recastable. There is always someone who can walk in and take your place. I don't care who you are. So, based on that, you need to have safety stuff, a whole bunch of other things that are, because you are working with other people. You are not just you. There are crew members if you're doing film. There are other cast members, including your GM if it's tabletop or stage acting or anything. Why does your ego tell you that you are the most important thing? And you should have a look at that. That's my thing on method acting. Are you the most important thing? No. Get out. Get out. We will replace you within 5 minutes. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
In terms of then sort of taking all of that to TTRPGs, I say I RP a lot. I RP to the level that the game is happy with.
Sure.
So I have had conversations with GMs being like, I RP hard. You need to know that. If you don't want me to, that's fine. I just need to know. Because I will and have, if anyone has listened, there's a particular episode of Dungeons and Doctorates where you can hear that I am literally crying. On purpose. Because my character had just had information revealed to them. They believed someone was dead. They were not dead. She was told this information in a burger joint by people who had known that information for multiple weeks, while she had been incredibly depressed about the fact someone was dead. The natural response to that was for her to get up from the table and to walk away, and on her walk to functionally start crying and to go somewhere. I won't spoil sort of a lot of the rest of around that, but it was revealed to her in such a way that that is what happened. And the GM went, you have to go after her. I'm like, they don't. They do not have to go after me. I know where I'm going, and we will still be able to do this. But at the end of the scene, I was like, cool, everyone good? Because I'm good. I, the person, am good. This is acting. This is how this works. You all need to know that I'm good, and we need to have a way to tap out of any RP that's happened. What we do for Meeples and Dragons is at the end, we do what are people's favorite things that happened this session? Go around, everyone's going to talk about their favorite thing, because it resets you out of actor and performer into real human being about to go out and have dinner, talk to real people, whatever that might be.
Right.
We use much the same in theatre of how do you close out of the end of a show? I did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as Nurse Ratchet. Trust me that there was a bunch of safety stuff that had to happen between myself and the guy who played the Jack Nicholson character. Oh my God. Oh no, there's someone in the chat who knows who was in that show with me, and I have just totally blanked. Oh, bad. Anyway, because she gets choked in that show. She gets choked out by and so at the end of the show, the two of us had to be like, we good? We good. Okay. We're real people now. We are not, we've taken off costumes. We have given each other a hug. We have walked away from this. It's so important.
Yeah.
The safety around RP is so important. And playing to the level that everyone else is comfy with. I do not expect everyone at the same table as me to RP as hard as I do.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Is me, not everyone, and that's fine.
Far on the other side of the spectrum, one of my good friends who used to do more RPG writing than he does right now, he plays he has a combination of just not super confident in acting skills, and also has aphantasia. And so very often, the way that he GMs or will play a character is describing it in terms of things that he's seen, in terms of movie shots or comic panels, or he'll describe what a character says instead of saying what they say. And that's kind of far on the other side of role playing, where yes, both of these examples of things are still role playing. They're just kind of different ends of a very wide spectrum of what constitutes making choices that are different than the ones that you, a person, me, Jonathan Boyle, would make.
That's kind of what I was going to say, is that it's for me kind of and this is sort of my baseline, my building block on which I will add all the other stuff like accents or mannerisms or things like that. But it comes down to who is this character, what are they about, and how is that as distinct from me, and then and then how does that influence the choices, and then everything else can get added on top. But for me, like when it comes to role playing, that's kind of where I live as far as like what role playing is, and so which is a very helpful, I think, mindset as a GM too, because then it helps you not. I don't think I was ever as bad as like being upset that my players were, like not doing the voice and, being Critical Role. But I don't think I was ever like that. But I think there was a time when I felt like at least a small percentage of like, you're not role playing right. Right? A trap that is very easy to fall into as a new GM. And I think it's a very helpful mindset to have that sort of like that definition of role playing as being like making decisions as distinct from you, because then that helps to incorporate a lot of different people's comfort levels in when it comes to like role playing at the table. Because as for me now, as long as you are making choices as your character, I'm good. You don't have to talk in character.
Yeah.
You don't even have to talk in the first person. I don't care about that. Like as long as you're making decisions as your character, we're good.
I do also think though that there is a thing about like if you are RPing, you need to sort of justify those decisions as well, so that other characters and actors and performers in these spaces know why those choices make sense for your character.
Yeah.
Not just that is a decision that they have made.
Right.
Because it can become incredibly difficult as a player if you are playing opposite someone who is incredibly closed off, which is fine as a choice. If they don't, I can still play with stuff with people who don't know, where I the character don't know stuff and that they're closed off. But if either player don't understand that you are making a character choice and not just being difficult, that is a real pain in the butt, because
yes,
and the sentence, well, it's what my character would do, is not enough justification.
Right.
It can be what your character would do, but you do need to be able to justify why that is, even if that is as a meta conversation. You need to be able to use that.
Yes, absolutely.
It's collaborative.
Like it's not.
Ship in the storm.
It's not enough to be able to be like, well, why did you just like, stick up the bartender and try to steal all of his money? It's like, because that's what my character do. Why? Because I made a character who would do that. Like that's not enough.
That's a tautology, baby. Like
it's like that's
Or like my character wouldn't ask you that. They've asked you that 2 weeks ago. They wouldn't ask you that question again. I'm like, but 2 weeks ago my character was incredibly angry at your character. You still want that information. Why wouldn't you ask it again now that we're back to being friends? Like, you as a human would do that.
Right.
So do it. Like, it's a story. Progress the story.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And also, like, from the, I do a lot more in, like, writing, in writing games and stuff. And so, like, I especially recently kind of tend to approach role-playing games more from the game side of things. And I'm like, we are playing a game here today, and it is okay to tap out for just a second and talk above table about the game that you're playing for a minute, and then come back down in. Like it is normal. And honestly, there are so many people who are like, what do I do about this problem in my game? I'm like, this would be solved by everybody.
Communication. Oh my god.
By everybody extracting themselves from the drama playing out for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
First rule of Tautology Club is the first rule of Tautology Club. It's my favorite thing anyone has ever written, Other Doc. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's
say...
kind of like to tie back into that. To tie back into that.
That's
it's why I love games like Kids on Bikes, which is one of the games I play a lot of one shots because you get your RP built in. Because you know stuff about each other and you've got relationships already built in that early, like, pseudo session 0, study first session, however you want to do it, stuff. You're like, cool. I know how I feel about all of this, to the point, like, I just played in a one-shot version where we decided that the jock and the nerd got along really, really well because I helped them pass a class so they could keep playing sport, which then meant later on I was like, put me in the locker. They were like, what? I'm like, put me in the locker. And they did, because it made perfect sense. It was the middle of a fight. We were in a, like, gym locker room. I needed to be in the locker so that I didn't die. I was like, put me in. I can't get up there. I'm tiny. Put me in the locker.
Well, a thing that I like, a helpful sort of switch that I made in my mind when it comes to TTRPGs within the last few years is, like, I think it's very tempting to, like, look at TTRPGs and imagine the movie of your TTRPG, but I think it's often, when it comes to, like, imagining it more as like a book with shifting perspectives, I think can be more helpful, because then, like, there's nothing wrong with, at the table, pretending, like, if your character's in a scene, pretending like the other people at your table are now the readers of the book that is being told currently from your perspective, and just telling them what's going on in your head as you're, like, doing the thing that you're doing, right? And that's, like, a shift that I made in my head recently, which, like, it's not a movie, it's a book, actually, and doing that sort of shift.
Or if it's not a book, then it's at least a script, and I will guarantee you, as someone who's read a bunch of scripts, there's stuff in it that's not the lines you say.
Exactly.
It's how it's said. It's who's walked into the scene. It's what does the scene look like. It's all there.
Yeah.
You're allowed. Movies, and also movies have outtakes. You can say it, change your mind, or say it and say other stuff around it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
A thing that I think is really interesting. So, Freeman, this is something that, like, I feel like you do a lot when you're role playing, which is that, like, you no, you have other, I've said it many times on this channel that Freeman is an incredible role player. But one of the reasons why I think that is because you do such a good job of non-verbally telegraphing exactly what's happening in your character's mind. Whenever you do stuff, you do such a, like, that's one of the things that, like, I appreciate about, like, your role playing. Everyone at the table immediately knows why your character has done what they've done and what they've said, and you have, like, all these different, like, subtle, like, tics and things like that you will display to sort of telegraph that, and it is always immediately understood at the table what is happening whenever you do that.
Show don't tell.
Yeah.
Play by post RP really is a book. Yeah. Yeah. It is wild to me that there are people who, you are creating a character, you aren't just creating words they say. That's the way I always think about it, is you are creating a complete instance of a person, what their mind is doing, what their body is doing. All of these things are not just, like, the scene that I was talking about where my character got up and walked away. I specifically remember describing, she like, they'd stopped talking, and I waited for a moment, and then I gathered up my stuff, and I stood up, and I pushed my chair in, and I walked away. You don't need me to tell you that I am pissed off and I'm walking away and I'm upset, because if someone waits a beat after you've finished, gathers up their things, stands up, pushes in their chair, and walks away from you, you know how they feel.
Yeah.
Baby, you know. You may not know why they feel that way, but you know why they're not talking to you. It's whatever you, darling, it's whatever you just said. Like, whatever you just did.
I wonder what they're... I wonder what they're feeling right now.
Yeah. Create characters, not avatars. Exactly. We are not... You are not a little Pokemon avatar. You are a live action, like...
Yeah.
You're not a sprite. You're a person.
Yep.
No, I've got a little idle animation.
It's the JRPG, like,
yeah.
You know, the back and forth sway of the JRPG character. Yeah.
No. Very that. Like, your character, and also, we've had episodes of both Meeples and Dragons and of Dean Doctors where I haven't been available. I'm doing a show, whatever it is. People have lives outside of what's going on in that moment. So there are episodes that are just Joe and Ross being Meredith and Harold that I'm not in. Mm-hmm. Or there's episodes where, like, all of the other adventurers, because my character in Meeples and Dragons is a warlock, who gets bamfed away occasionally by her patron. All right. I don't know what happened. Is anyone going to tell me? No? Sick. I don't know what happened. Perfect. And I don't go back and watch old episodes for that reason. Because I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I don't need to know. But that kind of stuff is so important. What?
I was just snarking at one of our mods just popped into chat and went, actually, it says right here, player race Sprite.
There it is, yeah.
Listen, I feel so bad for everyone who is not a lifelong glasses user like myself because there's so much emoting power in glasses. There's so much emoting power.
I wear tiny pieces of plastic on my eyeballs, so yes, I am actually a lifelong glasses wearer. These are my blue light glasses, but they do effectively the same thing. It's also my favorite thing to watch when someone does this, and I'm like, do not put your finger on that lens. You just put your finger on that lens. Yeah. You don't wear glasses. That's not how you...
Immediate tell. No, you grab here. You grab the arms, you grab the bridge. Like other tics that I know from like people who wear glasses for a long time is like, oh, my hands are busy. How do I push my glasses up my nose?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little boop.
Just a little like, oh, sorry, hang on, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So also so much power in one of these, which is
We have a meme of John doing that, but leaving getting out of the chair and just walking away.
Taking the glasses off, rubbing the bridge of the nose, then just getting up and walking away is just.
I think there's a good GIF of me on this channel doing like that exact sequence of thing.
GIF, yeah.
My version of that is a.
Yeah.
Yep. Just like. Okay. I'm still. Yep.
As someone who look, I will say this: only about I'd say 70% of the reason that I got the like blue light filter glasses was for all the things you need blue light filter for. The rest of it was for the emoting power. But my absolute favorite, is the right, like the take off the glasses and like blow out a sigh, because like that just adds that extra like, wow, this was. Whew, that was a big piece of information you just gave me, or like this is a real problem, and it just emphasizes that.
I used to be a teacher too, and there is like the power of looking over the top of your glasses, like at a kid who's clearly being a shit. Like,
yeah. Do we need to? No. Okay. Listen. And just readjust.
For us non.
We both know that you. Yeah, we both know that you were playing Fortnite on your Chromebook. You can't.
Oh my god. Sorry. Something from this morning. I was doing some Shakespeare stuff before this, and we were doing the scene from Midsummer Night's Dream where Phyllis Strait hands over the note with all of the different like possible shows at the end. The person playing it has written like the full name of the lamentable comedy and tragic death of Pyramus and Thisbe, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Fortnite, and we decided that Fortnite was the ballad of the fortuitous night.
Good. Yes.
So, Fortnite will never not be, yes, the ballad of the fortuitous night. And I love that there is a teacher counter, but I, as a qualified teacher who does still occasionally teach in classroom, sometimes it's the most important like reference point, because you're like a DM or GM wrangling a bunch of people who may or may not want to be on task on a regular basis.
You're
setting them challenges and activities to do that may take them half the time you expected, may take them 4 weeks instead of half a lesson.
Yep.
Who knows?
It's one of those. I'm with you. I don't teach anymore, but still, like, the years that I spent teaching and the schooling that I went through to become a teacher, like, so much of it, I'm just like, this is so universally applicable. I hate to sound like I talk about it all the time, but it legitimately.
It's relevant. I stand by it. It's relevant. It's why I don't run the teacher command when you do it, because I'm like, someone else will do it, and I don't need to, because it's relevant.
And the thing is, and the reality is, that's going to be true of anything. be true of anything that that like you've spent a lot of your time like learning to think in that way and whatever. Like if like the whole, like for me it's very clear in the whole like having studied English thing. It just comes out in a different way because like when you're relating something to, you know, being a teacher, you're like, it's like being a teacher, this aspect of it. When you're doing the stuff that like an English major teaches you, that's just you thinking, that's just talking. It comes out as like the analysis part of things, which is, you know, it's, there's nothing concrete to point to of like, as somebody who has studied English, that's just pretentious. But
I mean, I often use it's the same framing of like, as a supervisor, like with a team under me, it's basically being a teacher. So anyone like, it's, you know,
like
as
being a project manager is just being a teacher. Like
my favorite version of a lot of this stuff though is so I was teaching small children this term just gone. So for context, we are in the first term of our school year because our big summer break is Christmas, because summer here, so it's like 30 it's, oh god, transferred into freedom units. Wait, no, I can tell you exactly. It's 87 degrees outside at the moment. It is that like kids are like, I don't know how to do improv. I'm like, you improv every day. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you have conversations with people. You are improvising. That is all it is. Saying
you remember
the next
yesterday?
Thing. You remember how we just had a conversation on the playground about your favorite video game that I knew nothing about? I was improvising that conversation to pretending I cared. I didn't say that. I thought it really hard.
Well, like, and Jay Dragon has written a couple of really cool articles about like playground theory and game design, and one of my favorite lines from that is, everything that you need to know about gaming you learned on the playground. And it's kind of the same idea, right? You know how to improv. You were doing it yesterday when you were fucking pretending to be the Super Mario Brothers out on the playground equipment. That was improv. Congratulations. You know how.
Just because you think it has to be funny, you are funny. Stop trying.
Yeah.
Just try less hard.
Yeah.
Same goes for TTRPGs. Just try less hard. Honestly, do the logical next thing.
Yeah.
If the DM is going, here's a big hook of an adventure that you should go on. Jump on the grenade. Someone grab it. Someone do the thing and drag everyone else with you. Like, it's okay. You're allowed to do the obvious thing. You don't have to have a 4-hour conversation about it. Sometimes you do, because it matters. But the hook
all things
is
in moderation, right?
Including moderation, yes.
And including, yes. As a GM, also, sometimes when that big 4-hour comes, it's your job to make a judgment call as to whether they are talking themselves in circles in a helpful way or not in a helpful way.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy to say it, but we are actually at the end of our time.
That's not true. We've been talking for 15 minutes.
This may be one of the like fastest feeling Ramblemancies that I think we've ever had. But Kate, thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. It was a lot of fun having you.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people find you if they do not already know where to do that?
So I am at O'Sullivan Kate on most places on the internet, even on the only website that you're still allowed to dead name, Twitter. So it's the only thing in the entire world you're allowed to dead name. Correct. Is that website. That's correct. You can find me pretty much everywhere. I stream on Twitch occasionally as at O'Sullivan Kate, but that's usually that's there 3 times. Fun. It's usually Pomodoro streams, which is like co-working, because I usually have a bunch of stuff I'm supposed to have already gotten done that I haven't. Otherwise, not tonight in Australian time, but next weekend Australian time on Saturday nights. So it's 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which, to give you some context, right now it is 12:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So if that helps anyone with their time zone, that's what it is. On Saturday nights, we play over on Meeples and Dragons. This coming weekend, I think it's actually on a Friday night, though, because of some life things that are around people. Otherwise, Dungeons and Doctorates, that's Dungeons and Doctorates, or DN Doctorates, is the major podcast I'm part of, as well as Mistworld over on That's How We Roll. But keep an eye on my Twitter, because that's usually where I post about what else I'm doing, one-shots, other things like this, for example, and where you can find me. And I'll be at PAX Australia in October. So, if anyone's flying all the way across the world, you're welcome. Otherwise, that will probably mean there will be a PAX Australia Crit or Kiss the Monster Manual VOD after that, which the current one you can see. I will chuck a link in chat once I quickly pull it up off of my YouTube.
Yeah, and I know you've put it in the Discord as well, but I would, if you would put it in there again, because I'm sure it's gotten buried by now.
Really?
Yeah, you can put it in the Ramblemancy channel so that people can kind of quickly go from here to there.
Can do. But yeah, I do a lot of random crap on the internet. Or if you're in Perth, Western Australia, keep an eye on my Twitter, because it'll tell you what live theatre shenanigans I'm up to next.
Awesome.
Because I don't do enough things, apparently.
All right. Well, that is all for us this evening. I think we'll be back next week for Ramblemancy. I think we're... Yeah? Maybe? TBD.
TBD.
TBD. We will figure this out.
Keep an eye on the Discord.
Exactly. Keep an eye on the Discord. This is around the time of year where things start getting a little shaky in terms of our regularity of streaming. So,
also, there's a rock in my insides.
There's also that. Yeah.
And whether or not I will be available next Friday depends on whether or not that rock stays inside.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
Stay hydrated, friends.
Yes. But yeah, you can always check out, if you want to know what is happening with us from week to week, you can jump in our Discord. That is where we'll have all of our announcements, pretty much. We don't tend to do as many, like, day-to-day sort of programming announcements on Twitter anymore. So Discord really is the best way to, like, keep up with what we're doing and, yeah, all that. So yeah, Kate, thanks again for coming and joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining us this evening, and throwing your 2 cents into the chat. Always appreciate that. We'll see you next time, whenever that is. So I guess I could just skip the middle part today. I can just say, we'll see you the next time. You just have to come roll with us.
There you go. Nailed it.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.